Hello, hi and welcome everyone. I see people are still trickling in, but we're just past the hour. So my name is Kira Derman, and I am a technical specialist at NCBA Closeout. I actually started as a program manager managing the REGIS-ER project in our Washington, DC office. I'm going to start with a brief introduction. This webinar is the first webinar in a series of 4 that we will be hosting on the legacy of REGIS-ER's 7 years of resilience building in Niger and Burkina Faso. Each webinar will also, upon each webinar, we'll also be releasing a technical brief related to the topic of that webinar. So for today, we will be sharing that.
La réunion d'aujourd'hui, nous allons partager un lien avec vous et vous pouvez cliquer sur ce lien pour télécharger les briefings techniques qui sont disponibles.
Resilience and economic growth in the Sahel-Enhanced Resilience, REGIS-ER, as part of USAID's Resilience in the Sahel-Enhanced Initiative, otherwise known as RISE-1. It's a Sahel Regional Office-led initiative to address the root causes of persistent vulnerability in Niger and Burkina Faso, and to break the cycle of humanitarian assistance. The RISE initiative included several projects. It included REGIS-ER, Resilience and Economic Growth in the Sahel Accelerated Growth, REGIS-AG, a focused value chain project, and Sahel Resilience Learning Project, or SAREL, which was focused on collaboration, learning, and adaptation across the entire RISE portfolio. RISE also included 5 Food for Peace funded development food assistance programs, 3 in Niger and 2 in Burkina Faso, and collaboration with the World Food Programme in each country. REGIS-ER was designed at the nexus of humanitarian and development assistance and aimed to strengthen the resilience of vulnerable households and communities. We use USAID's definition of resilience as the ability of people, households, communities, countries, and systems to mitigate, to adapt to, and recover from shocks and stresses in a manner that reduces chronic vulnerability and facilitates inclusive growth. And I should mention that each webinar will also be interpreted simultaneously. If you are joining and would like the French translation, please click on the icon at the bottom and where it says English, EN, and switch that to French, and you will receive the translation. So today's program agenda will cover the breadth of REGIS-ER's work. We'll start with an introductory presentation by our panelists, followed by a panel discussion, and then a Q&A session where panelists can respond to your questions. I will now hand over to Bill Stringfellow, the Chief of Party for REGIS-ER, and he will start with a presentation of the REGIS-ER project.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Stringfellow, and I'm NCBA Closeout's Chief of Party on REGIS-ER, and I'm based in Niamey, Niger. Today, I will provide you with basic information about the project and summarize its evolution and approach. First, the basic information. REGIS-ER started in November 2013 and will end in March 2021. The goal of the project is to increase resilience of chronically vulnerable populations in agropastoral and marginal agriculture livelihood zones in Niger and Burkina Faso. REGIS-ER had 3 strategic objectives, each one a project component, and each one with a set of intermediate results to be achieved. The first objective is increased and sustainable economic well-being, or livelihoods. The second objective is strengthened governance and institutions. The third objective is improved health and nutrition. In addition, REGIS-ER had an embedded humanitarian response. This fourth component and strategic objective was only activated by the project in the event of a humanitarian crisis. Next slide. The REGIS-ER zone of intervention was initially comprised of 25 communes, 10 in the regions of Zander, Maradi, and Tillabéri in Niger, and 15 in the regions of the East, Sahel, and Centre-Nord in Burkina Faso. During the period 2016-2018, the project also intervened in 5 other communes in Burkina, 3 of which were in North region through the intermediary of NGO partners. During the life of the project, REGIS-ER intervened in more than 1,200 villages. The consortium that implemented REGIS-ER was led by NCBA Closeout and was comprised of 11 NGOs and private sector partners, 8 of them based in Niger or Burkina. Over the past 7 years, REGIS-ER has successfully demonstrated, scaled up, and disseminated resilience activities on conservation farming, Habbanaye, health and nutrition, water, sanitation, hygiene, local governance, and shock responsiveness for the benefit of almost 320,000 families in Burkina and Niger. Now let's look at REGIS-ER's evolution, which was characterized by adaptive management. Let's go back to the timeline. As you can see, the project can be divided into 4 phases. During the startup phase, REGIS-ER piloted numerous resilience activities and built trust with communities. This period was a prerequisite for all that followed. The scaling up phase built on the successes of the startup phase, and the project established 8 programs. The programs broke down the silos that existed during the startup phase and allowed for greater integration of the different resilience activities. During this period, in October 2017, REGIS-ER refined its sustainability strategy, which was based primarily on the promotion of local institutions. The project then obtained the buy-in of its commune partners on the strategy and began implementation. During its consolidation phase, REGIS-ER narrowed its geographic and programmatic focus to 13 communes, 7 in Niger and 6 in Burkina, and to 9 successful activities, which were selected by its commune partners. At the same time, the project changed its mode of operation to align with its sustainability strategy and trained selected field staff in coaching. These coaches strengthened the capacity of local institutions
Ont renforcé les capacités des institutions locales pour qu'elles puissent prendre en charge ces activités de résilience. Les institutions au niveau des communes étaient des conseils municipaux, des groupes de travail citoyens et d'autres plateformes basées dans les communautés. Les institutions au niveau des communautés étaient des conseils
committees in Niger. During its final 15 months, REGIS-ER further reduced its zone of intervention to 8 communes, 4 in Tillabéri region of Niger, and 2 each in the East and Sahel regions of Burkina. The project continued to implement its sustainability strategy and, in close collaboration with the local institutions, reoriented its remaining activities to target youth by awarding small grants to young entrepreneurs and making youth the main beneficiaries of the Habbanaye activity. REGIS-ER also demonstrated adaptive management in responding to the growing insecurity in Burkina and in Niger's Tillabéri region. Although this problem made implementation more challenging, the project found innovative local solutions to its operational difficulties. Citizen working groups took on increased responsibility in project implementation, which improves sustainability. Finally, let's look briefly at NCBA Closeout's and REGIS-ER's approach to resilience. We at NCBA Closeout consider resilience to be an essential set of capacities that can be developed and maintained by individuals, households, or communities in the face of complex risk. We also consider social capital to be the primary asset for resilience. So REGIS-ER worked to strengthen social capital. In addition, we designed project activities to build absorptive, adaptive, and transformative resilience capacities among vulnerable households and communities. On REGIS-ER, we applied NCBA Closeout's systems approach to locally led development. Can we go to that slide? Our methodology of multi-stakeholder engagement brings local actors together to create a shared vision, to identify a common objective, and to implement an action plan to achieve them. REGIS-ER's facilitative role ensured that the process was led by communities, not dictated by the project. In terms of local institutions, REGIS-ER's approach was to strengthen existing structures whenever possible. However, citizen working groups were created to facilitate communication between municipal government and villages, an important gap identified in the decentralized governance systems in both countries. Our panelists will examine these key issues about the approach in greater detail. Thank you for your attention. We're now going to watch a short video entitled Kinda Amadou.
C'est un des partenaires qui accompagne la commune de Gaïri depuis le début de ce mandat. Et il a permis d'appuyer et renforcer les capacités des acteurs de la collectivité, notamment les acteurs locaux. Le plus édifiant est celui des AIE. Donc les AIE, c'est l'association des usagers de l'eau. Et dans le cadre de la mise en œuvre de la réforme, les AIE donc sont le maillon de base qui permet donc de gérer les infrastructures hydrauliques à la base. Et de ce fait-là, ils doivent reverser une redevance à la commune. Cette activité ne se faisait pas du fait de l'ignorance de ces derniers. Mais avec l'appui de REGIS-ER, ils ont pu comprendre le mécanisme et ils se sont engagés à verser conséquemment leur redevance, qui est de 10 000 francs par point d'eau. Et de ce fait-là, en 2017, la commune elle est passée de 100 000 francs à 1 200 000 francs en termes de recettes au compte donc de la redevance eau versée par les AIE. Donc de ce fait, là, nous ne pouvons que saluer le partenaire et l'ensemble des acteurs donc, qui ont bénéficié donc, de leur appui. Et en fait, la redevance apparaissait pour les populations comme une arnaque. Ils trouvaient qu'à partir du moment où le point 2 était déjà réalisé, ils n'avaient pas à payer pour consommer. Mais avec la sensibilisation de REGIS-ER, ils ont compris que une chose est de réaliser l'ouvrage, mais une autre est de l'entretenir, d'assurer sa pérennité. Et de ce fait, là, la contribution, la redevance eau, permettait à la commune de payer donc, les artisans réparateurs qui assuraient donc, la maintenance préventive des points d'eau. Donc après ce message, ils ont compris et ils ont commencé à payer donc, la redevance. Il y a eu la mise en place du GTC, qui est une action qui a été menée avec l'appui de REGIS-ER également. Donc le GTC, c'est le groupe de travail citoyen. Ce groupe de travail-là a continué la sensibilisation auprès des populations et fort malheureusement, avec la situation qu'on vit actuellement, naturellement, elle a baissé. Mais l'ensemble des aïeux qui sont accessibles continuent de payer leurs redevances. Donc nous remercions le peuple américain pour sa solidarité à l'endroit du peuple burkinabé à travers donc, le projet de REGIS-ER qui a permis à la commune de Gaïri d'avoir un dispositif en termes d'eau.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maggie Janes Lucas, and I am the Chief of Party for the Sahel Collaboration and Communication Activity of USAID. I'm currently in Burkina Faso in Ouagadougou, but I'm usually based in Niamey in Niger. I'm really pleased to be with all of you today and to provide a bit of facilitation moderation for this discussion. Before we get into the discussion, though, we do have 4 panelists that I want to briefly introduce so you all can know exactly where they're coming from and target your questions better towards them after their presentations. First of all, you all just heard from Bill Stringfellow, who has been the REGIS-ER Chief of Party since July 2015. Bill is based in Niamey and has over 40 years of experience in international development in French-speaking West and Central Africa, including 35 years in Sahelian countries and 15 years in Niger. During that time, he's worked for various NGOs, specializing in the management of projects and country offices. We also have Amath Diop, who is the Deputy Chief of Party since the beginning of REGIS-ER project and the Burkina Faso country representative for REGIS-ER since 2020. After long experience with the private sector dealing with natural resource management, collection, processing, and exporting, Amath has been the COP also for NCBA projects in Senegal, for the Millet Project and the AGGRN project, Wulu Nafa. And at the same time, the wealth creation component lead for NCBA Closeout. We're also really happy to have with us Tim Frankenberger, who many of you know globally as the president and co-founder of Tango International and a global expert on food security, livelihood approaches, and resilience. He has more than 40 years of experience in international development with specialized skills in project design, M&E, and policy analysis. And we're really pleased to have among the panelists Sadatu Umaru, who is an agricultural specialist with USAID Burkina Faso and knows firsthand just how REGIS-ER worked, as having been one of the staff on REGIS-ER in the past. She has 15 years of experience in the implementation of agriculture and irrigation programs, both in the field of agricultural research with ICRISAT and in agricultural development programs with USAID. Sadatu's background is in horticulture and plant protection, and she joined the USAID Resilience team in 2017 in Burkina Faso. Those are the panelists that we have with us today, and I'd like to pass it back over to the next presentation, which will be given by Amath Diop, the Deputy Chief of Party, and then we'll go from Amath to Tim and to Sadatu. I hope that you've all been able to identify the translation component if needed. And if you have any questions for the panelists, please make sure you put them in the Q&A section. Thanks, and I'm going to turn it over to Amat.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amat, as said by Maggie and so on. And then we'll be discussing with you some successes we have and also the results we have achieved so far. And also give you part of the overview of the REGIS-ER approach and sustainability lessons and lesson learned, and by giving some example of that. I would I wish to have the slide on the results, if it is available. This is the system approach, but we have afterward the results. Okay. During the life of the project, REGIS-ER achieved for the full-time equivalent jobs 5,747 jobs, and this high performance is explained by the commitment of the local institution to support job beneficiaries in pursuit of their activities. The various jobs created generally concern CBSP activities, CBSP standing for community-based solution providers, market gardening, income generating activities, and animal fattenings. The job continuity rate recorded in each region is much
La création des emplois a été plus forte dans l'Est que dans l'Ouest. Pour vous donner un exemple,
the continuity rate was 85% and the Center North 92%. Talking about the farmers who applied improved technology and management practices. The most widespread technologies and practice was CF for conservation farming, BDL for bio-reclamation of degraded lands, market gardening, Habbanaye, and animal fattening. And 181,000 farmers have applied these improved technologies. In the three regions, even where REGIS-ER withdrew by end of FY19, the number of producers who applied improved technologies afterwards increased by 51% in Zinder, 14% in Maradi, and 29% in Central North. Okay. And something else that I want to outline is the projects have reported increase of income from farm activities by 92%. In Niger, as well as in Burkina Faso, the main activities that have further contributed to this increase of the income are income generating activities financed through internal community savings and loan groups, fattening and marketing, fattening, and also market gardening. It should be also noted that overall, the strategy of strengthening sustainability has positively influenced the results at the end of the project. The consolidation and the scaling up progression of 42% in Maradi and 12% in Zinder of successful activities such as community savings and loans, animal fattening, and market gardening. It emerges that from this qualitative survey that we did, that municipal council, village development councils, and the citizen groups were at the core of the activities that have lead to that increase of the revenues. Respectively, on the other side, for the animals, 76,000 goats have been placed for 20,000 beneficiaries at end of the project. On the other side, we have to know that the initial placement was 22,000 animals for 900 beneficiaries, which means that over time, the spread has been more than 3 times the initial investment in the beneficiaries. Now let's get to the overview of REGIS-ER approach focused on the community leading to sustainability. NCBA Closeout's whole system approach to development engages all actors within the system to work together through a common framework. As said by Bill a few minutes ago, our facilitative role ensures that the process is led by the community, not dictated by the project. After local capacity strengthening and at the end of the project, the community is left with the skills, resources, will, and power to drive their own development. The underlying sustainability status is then displayed by the community through action they are able to undertake by themselves. Talking about this sustainability and lesson learned, just to summarize what we have done actually. Let's give some examples. For the conservation farming activities, CF rapidly gained momentum in the REGIS-ER targeted villages because it's immediate and tangible, because of its immediate and tangible effects. Overall, number of CF producers increased from 5,000 to more than 52,000 people between 2019 and 2017. The CF techniques were disseminated through demonstration fields, farmer visit, and also broadcast on local radios. At the community level, the technology can be affordable through sharing of reapers and also training and coaching through lead farmers approach, and this enables quick scale-up. We have also to add that the local government technical services also was involved in measuring all the yields. One part of the project, we developed this CBSP's capacities, and the network of agriculture community-based solution providers inventoried the fertilizer needs for products and linked them to the MFIs. In Burkina Faso, if I can take an example on it, they have even linked the MFIs for loan application, and therefore ensuring timely procurement of input and delivery to communities. And we had over 150 tons of NPK fertilizers, valuing more than $100,000 US, and they had credit for that with their assistance. Talking about sustainability, also Habbanaye activity in the SEBA, we found that the SEBA municipal council use PCPR, which is our community resilience plan, successfully to prepare a proposal to raise a project which is working in the Yaga province and had 7,700 US to do the same way, Habbanaye to the same way that REGIS-ER is doing. The Gamba village in Zender collected more than 2,600 US from community to contribute to building and equipping their health center. The money collected within the community help to purchase building materials and the professional mason to finish and install all the building. With the facility completed, the mayor recruited the health agent. What was said by one resident of Kanda, which is Kanda Ibrahim, now it takes less than $2 for us for a visit, as the center is just near us. We feel relieved, especially pregnant women who can get prenatal care and professional support to give birth. The government technical services have been very supportive to citizen working groups, subcommittees, to ensure technical capacity, quality control, and monitoring and evaluation. Technical services also ensured compliance with national policy guidelines and standards. Collaboration between this citizen working groups and the municipal council on resilience initiative produce high socio-economic impact in the community, at the community level, especially for disadvantaged social groups such as women and youth. Finally, talking about one of the last activities the project did on the field, it was the effect of the youth grants that we did, that we provided in the first quarter of FY20. And we found it necessary to see what's going on with it and what is the status and how going forward we think these things are going. So USAID initiated a study. In this study, what we have actually outlined, and we are at the final stage, is that the beneficiaries are saying that they can now satisfy their personal needs and those of their family. They can now they can pay the rents and the salaries of their employees. Some have also already bought residential plots, and diversification of activities with income they have already generated. They also are strengthening links between family members. One key issue that we were aiming at solving was preventing people from going to traditional gold mining sites or migration. And this is going on actually, and some of these grantees have actually have some people who usually go to Cote d'Ivoire and all gold mining sites who are actually on the side. This is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Amat. That was a great overview of some of the highlights and results. We're going to move now to Tim Frankenberger from Tango International, who's going to share some data and information based on endline and baseline and midline data that has been collected at the time of REGIS-ER, and talk a little bit about resilience.
Maggie. Greetings, everyone, from Tucson, Arizona. It's still early morning here, so the sun is just starting to come up. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So Tango has been collecting, doing an impact evaluation for the RISE program, which REGIS-ER is part of, and we were trying to determine what activities were strengthening households' resilience to shocks. So to do this, we were examining the impact of the program in household resilience and various resilience capacities. So resilience, basically, we're looking at the ability to recover from shocks or the ability to maintain well-being in the face of shocks. And resilience capacities are essentially the conditions and resources that enable households to achieve resilience, or more or less the determinants of resilience. And as Bill had already pointed out, many activities were strengthening absorptive capacity, which minimizes exposure and recovery quickly. They were strengthening adaptive capacity, where livelihood strategies could be promoted that were better adapted to changing conditions, and transformative capacity, where systems level changes were brought in to enable lasting resilience. And so to do this impact evaluation, we are using difference in difference and propensity score matching as part of our evaluation toolkit. Next slide, please. So what we were particularly interested in, and as you saw the range of different interventions being proposed by REGIS-ER, but other projects are also working in these areas, we wanted to know what were households' exposure to comprehensive resilience programming. And so we were looking at 8 intervention sets, which cover multiple interventions in each one of these things, but what were they doing to strengthen ag production, livestock rearing, communal natural resource management, market and business development, access to financial services, human capital, which includes health and nutrition as well, disaster preparedness and mitigation, and governance. And so looking at this impact, we were looking at a treatment group where exposure to 7 of 8 intervention sets, and a control group. Next slide, please. So the shocks that we were particularly interested in this end line that we're currently doing the analysis on, and I do want to point out that we're still in the middle of finishing that end line, and we should be done fairly soon. But it's a shock period examining from April 2017, which is when the midline was carried out, to October 2020 when the end line was carried out. And the main shocks that people were exposed to during that time were flooding, drought, insect invasions, animal diseases, price inflation, both for food and agricultural inputs, human illness, particularly COVID, and conflict shocks. And what we found was that the RISE comprehensive resilience programming did have a positive impact on resilience to these shocks. We have one measure that we use called realized resilience, and this is the change in food security between the baseline and the end line in the face of these shocks. If we see a stability or an improvement, then that means that these households and communities are resilient. We also were looking at perceived ability to recover, and this is a summary measure of households' reported ability to recover from multiple shocks. And again, we saw a positive impact coming from these multiple program activities that were being implemented by REGIS-ER and other projects in the RISE program area. Next slide, please. So we wanted to know whether these interventions that were being implemented in the RISE program were actually strengthening resilience capacities. And so the preliminary analysis has shown that we're seeing positive improvements in cash savings, access to informal safety nets, availability of hazard insurance, conflict mitigation, asset ownership. In terms of absorptive capacity, they also strengthened adaptive capacity in terms of livelihood diversity, access to financial resources, exposure to information and asset ownership. And we saw positive gains in transformative capacity as well in terms of access to infrastructure, access to communal natural resources, and access to formal safety nets. So from preliminary analysis that we've done on the end line, it looks like the RISE program and projects like REGIS-ER were having a very positive impact on resilience and strengthening resilience capacities among these populations that they were working with. We will have further analysis carried out in the next couple of weeks, and we will be able to share that when it becomes available. Next slide, please. So thank you. That ends my presentation.
Thanks a lot, Tim. That was a great overview and really helpful. And I know that folks are going to have a lot of questions on that. And I think we'll have an opportunity to have a lot more discussion in the coming weeks with you and your team and others working under RISE. So let's go right now to Sadatu Umaru, who is at USAID Burkina Faso. And I'm going to turn it over to her. She does not have any slides, but she has some comments and reflections on the 7 years of REGIS-ER. Over to you, Sadatu.
Thank you, Maggie. Hi, everyone. So for the USAID perspective with regard to REGIS-ER intervention and how it contributed to USAID's resilience goal in the Sahel, I think the first thing to do is to refer, for example, to the USAID resilience definition, which is the ability of individuals, household, community, countries, and systems to mitigate, adapt to, and recover from shocks and stresses in a way that reduces chronic vulnerability and facilitates inclusive growth. We could, based on this definition, we could say that USAID resilience investment focus on building capacities of these vulnerable people and systems to learn, adapt, and transform in response to challenges and opportunities they may be facing during their life. But for the specific case of REGIS-ER, one of the best examples of resilience capacity building is the story of a young woman and her community that were living in a deep poverty situation and benefited from the project support to rise from this poverty and become successful producers and model entrepreneurs based on the trainings, capacity building, and all project activities that we saw presented earlier on climate change, agricultural practices, livestock production, saving, all that is related to livelihood, increasing livelihood. So we all know that the best science for measuring resilience is resilience as a capacity mainly in relation to shocks and stress that occur. And unfortunately, the shocks occurred and it wasn't even a shock that they were prepared to, because most of the interventions are based on climate shocks. But the shock that occurred was insecurity shock, and this community had an armed group attack their village and they lost everything. They have to leave and become internally displaced people in a new location. They left everything behind them and they have to restart a new life. But thanks to the resilience capacity and knowledge that they acquired, she and her community were able to bounce back from this shock and rebuild her life by taking their skills and using them in their new location, because this is something that they cannot lose. It's something that they have with whatever situation can happen. The knowledge and skill, resilience capacity that they got from this project are something that will remain forever. So these are sustainable changes that REGIS-ER stimulated in beneficiaries. And another point to highlight is that resilience investments are also in line with USAID priorities in building resilience. So when we look at the sustainability strategy developed and implemented by REGIS-ER during the last 2 years of the project life, they handed over the implementation of key resilience activities to the commune and provided them with capacity to plan, finance, and implement project activities that they believe, the community themselves believe that these activities are successful for their commune. This is a strong progress towards self-reliance. And finally, when we take
en ce qui concerne la résilience. Et enfin, quand on va parler de la résilience au Sahel,
one of the key principles is system strengthening. And when we look at the organizational structure around the governance system that REGIS-ER built with different operational platforms from the commune to the community level, including the Conseil Municipal, the citizen working group represented by the CVD at the village level, and the services providers platform, the service providers platform. This is a great example of enhancing system, and that may result in self-driving action. by the same actors of this system and will continue to occur after project ends. So that's roughly, USAID perspective when it comes to REGIS-ER contribution to the resilience goal. Over to you.
Great, thanks a lot, Sadatu, for that summary. So we're now at the point where we've heard from all of our panelists. Thank you so much to Bill, Amat, Tim, and Sadatu. We have about 15 minutes that we'd like to take and share some reflections and a couple of questions that were sent in, kind of higher level overview questions that were sent in ahead of time. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions. We obviously are not going to be able to answer all of them today. There's over 135 people on the call, which is fantastic. And we got, I would say, probably upwards of 20 plus questions ahead of time. And now I know we're keeping a running list of all the questions coming in. So I would ask for your patience during this webinar. We will get to as much as we can. And then I know the team is committed to replying to every question. And we will be able to post that on the NCBA CLUSA website or share it to all of the folks who registered. And you can, of course, forward that on to anyone you would like. This is also being recorded, so you'll be able to replay and listen to the webinar and the questions and the responses that come up. So with that, again, thanks to our panelists. I'd like to just go back for a minute. I mean, I think Sadatu, you bring up really important points about sustainability. And you mentioned some of them, but we're looking at sustainability really in Niger and Burkina Faso in protracted crises, right? In the places where REGIS-ER was implementing. And I guess I'd like to just pose a question to Bill and Amat. What do you think were the most important elements of your sustainability plan and structure, and how you're seeing it play out in the closeout of your project? One person had written in ahead of time, what are some of the most important elements of community-led development? And I think that that plays really nicely into that question about sustainability. So if I could pass it over to Bill and Amat, just to reflect on that for a minute, I think it would be really nice follow-up to Sadatu's comments about USAID's the importance placed on sustainability and resilience programming.
Okay, thanks. This is Bill. Thank you, Maggie. So there are two questions, as I see it, or if I understood correctly. The sustainability strategy is essentially based on capacity strengthening of local institutions and capacity strengthening of the community-based solution providers that Amat spoke about. And this approach promotes sustainability by ensuring the effective local ownership and management of resilience activities. And it built private sector networks for continued access to inputs and technical expertise. So that is, let's say, a brief response to the first question. Maggie, would you like me to move on to the second one, or Amat, or did I not respond to the first question?
No, I think that's really helpful. And just to remind folks that there will be a brief sent out that will have some more details of this information that they can look at. But I think you answered the first part. Thank you. Either you or Amat could go ahead. This was a couple of people asked this question about the important elements of community-led development ahead of the webinar.
I'd like to start on that one, if that's okay, Amat. Please.
Yes, that's fine.
In fact, that's the subject of the fourth and final webinar, but let's look at that question now. In my opinion, the most important element of true community-led development is good local leadership, both local government and local civil society. And a dynamic local private sector is almost as important. And so the project developed the leadership skills of the key actors in municipal government and in the civil society organizations, the citizen working groups at the commune level, and the village development councils in Burkina, and local development committees in Niger at the community level. So you get essentially a decentralized public-private partnership when the system functions properly. And one thing to remember is that municipal councils are not in session year round. So if they don't have effective civil society partners, the commune doesn't progress during those periods. They stagnate. And then I think one other often overlooked important element of community-led development is that it thrives when the central level government creates a favorable enabling environment for community-led development and decentralization. I'll stop there.
Okay.
Great. Amat, do you want to add some things?
Yeah. We have talked about the efficiencies, but what I want to add is that talking about sustainability also leads us to the resilience framework, which the third capacity is the transformative capacity. At this stage, what is addressed at the time is systems. And REGIS-ER got to that framework. REGIS-ER got to this transformative capacity building through the local institutions. What is happening in this is now we have all these CWGs, as you may know, wherever we have worked in these communes, we try to settle these CWGs, which are citizen working groups, that actually are leaders of what's all going on with the communities, because they are working and also in working with the capacity with the municipal village councils, and there is a link with the municipalities, but also the CBSPs. And all this, to my opinion, have contributed to the sustainable status that we find in many communities where we have worked. Thank you. Okay, that's good, Maggie.
Great, thanks a lot. Yeah, thank you, Amat. I think that's really helpful. I want to take that a little bit now as you're talking about the capacities, the transformative capacities in resilience. I want to take it out a little bit because a lot of folks, when they wrote in ahead of the webinar, had questions about measuring resilience, what contributes to strengthening resilience capacities. And I think we're really lucky to have Tim on the call, who's been entrenched in this for many years and will be for the next several years as well, I'm sure. And so, Tim, maybe you can reflect a little bit on specifically in the community.
Lost you there, Maggie. I think she wanted me to talk about resilience measurement. Yeah, you know, it's been really interesting. We've been tracking this work now for, as Amat pointed out, I was there 5 years ago when we were presenting the results coming out of the baseline. And we've done the midline, we've done 5 rounds of recurrent monitoring, surveys, and now we're doing the endline. And it's really been interesting to track not only the successes of the program, but all of the different shocks that these communities have been faced with over the course of this numerous years. And, you know, the fact that conflict has been going up, that COVID also hit these areas, in addition to the droughts and floods and insect problems and livestock diseases, all of these have had a huge effect on any development gains that are going on. And in spite of all of these shocks, we're still seeing very positive gains in people's ability to manage these shocks and stresses. And, you know, I think it's the combination of projects. It's not just REGIS-ER, but it's the other projects working in the same area that I think is having a multiplier effect in these areas. Now, what's going to be interesting is we also are going to be carrying out a baseline for RISE-2 sometime in May, I think is when we're going to be doing that. And we're going to be essentially tracking areas over the course of probably 10 years. So one of the things that's really important to understand here is that a lot of these transformational changes that are necessary to create the sustainability of conditions to allow for local ownership of any ideas, of any new institutional strengthening that's going on, that takes a long time to put in place. And we're actually starting to see these kind of changes happening. And so I'm really excited about the fact that USAID has committed to tracking changes in resilience that have been happening in these areas for a long period of time, so we can actually learn from what works and what doesn't, how different shocks are impacting those interventions, and what seems to work better when you have a combination of climate change, COVID, and conflict, which is what you have in West Africa. So I'm excited about the work we're doing on this. I'm excited that we're showing impact, but I'm also excited about how we can learn from each other about what programming improvements can be made through this community development approach that REGIS-ER has been implementing. The other thing that's been happening in terms of the evolution of resilience measurement is not only are we able to measure how households and communities are managing these shocks and stresses, but we're also strengthening our ability to measure how systems manage these shocks and stresses. And so systems measurement, such as how markets can be strengthened to manage these shocks and stresses more effectively, how governance systems in terms of service delivery can be strengthened. And these are the things that we're going to be tracking very closely over the coming years. So I think that we've shown not only in West Africa, but in other locations around the world that comprehensive resilience approaches really do work, and they actually make a difference. And I think that one of the things that I'm excited about this program is that we're realizing too that we need to have much more focus on health and nutrition as part of our resilience measurement. And this is happening right now with improvements that we're making in our surveying and in our analysis. Over.
Great, thanks so much, Tim. Sorry, I think I got cut off there for a minute. So I'm hopefully back to stay, but I did catch most of Tim, your comments. I think that's really important, and I want to just highlight the fact that Tim pointed out the ability of communities, individuals, government systems to manage shocks and stresses is being reinforced not just by REGIS-ER, but by a multitude of activities. And I want to give an opportunity to Sada if she wants to add anything. Certainly not necessary, but I do think that it's really exciting the way that USAID developed and planned and designed RISE and RISE-2 to really have that layering, sequencing, and integration. And I think that we've seen that in the way that REGIS transitioned over the 7 years. You know, they cut back in some of the areas where they were implementing, they zoned in and focused on governance. They really focused on the sustainability piece. So I'd like to hear a little bit more just about the learning aspect and what, you know, you guys have learned under REGIS around the way that you're doing implementation and how you're collaborating. And if the way that USAID had sort of envisioned RISE 1 and then transitioning into RISE 2, if you really feel like that's been an asset, it's been working. It seems that when we look at the data, that's what we see, that it's having this multiplier effect. But anyway, I'd like to pass it to Sadhu and maybe Amat if you two have any commentary on sort of the learning aspect overall and the way that USAID had designed RISE 1 and RISE 2.
Thank you, Maggie. So I would like to emphasize on what Tim said when he said that the resilience measurement from USAID will not only be focusing on one project or one activity, but rather it's a combination of different activities under the RISE project that are measured. So some of the assessment that has been conducted and some of the early learning we had from RISE 1 project was, for example, the cost-benefit analysis that was conducted, and the analysis found, the assessment found that USAID's agricultural investments in key value chains, and the key value chains are livestock, poultry, and cowpea, which is not only REGIS-ER activities, but also bring together REGIS-AG. So this assessment showed that these key valuation under RISE are successful and lifting beneficiaries out of extreme poverty. And a previous RISE midterm evaluation conducted also shows that 55% of households in Burkina Faso program area were able to maintain their food security in the face of increasing shocks such as drought, animal disease, as was mentioned by Tim, and also sharp food prices increase. So far, most of the assessment conducted on these activities separately or together under RISE program are showing really good results. And we have some specific points that are still needing, they still need, USAID investment, and that's, for example, cross-cutting issues in gender. We have water security. So those specific points was the focus, or are the focus now for RISE 2, where we have specific activities instead of having one integrated project like REGIS-ER, implementing livelihood, governance, and health and nutrition. We rather go to specific domain. When we have water security specifically addressed by one activity, we have livelihood and all about economic growth addressed by another activity. We have health and nutrition under another component, and we have cross-cut in issues like governance, gender, that are separate in different components. So this is some of the lesson that was learned based on the previous implementation under RISE, that we think we will be more successful in providing specific support to specific issues that vulnerable people are facing within the resilience zone of implementation. Over.
Great, thanks a lot, Sadatu. I really appreciate that. I want to hand over to Amat, because I believe that he had a point to raise, if I'm not mistaken, to close out just this section of the panel discussion. Then we're going to move over to answering some of the questions that have been coming in from the participants. But Amat, I want to give you a moment to just reflect on the question about learning, collaboration, the way that USAID has done layering, sequencing, and integration, and how REGIS sort of implemented that over the 7 years. If you can. Over to you.
So I am back, and there's just wanted to add a few things on what Saratu and Tim said. You know, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. So, right. You know, when we were beginning this RISE programs, shocks were not the ones we are faced further on. And the main shocks that we were talking about was flood, drought, and so on. But so many things have come afterwards, and then this even have changed the way
Did we lose you, Amat? Okay, I think we may have lost Amat. Hopefully you all can still hear me. Sadatu, I want to pass it to you for a minute. You said you wanted to add something on collaboration. Please go ahead, Sadatu.
Yes, one of the key change or one of the key lessons learned from RISE 1 to RISE 2 is this collaboration, point that was one of the missing part of RISE 1, because during RISE 1, USAID did not really focus on bringing together all implementing partners to collaborate together. So it was something that was missing. And for the second phase of RISE, USAID puts a great focus on collaboration by awarding the SCC, Sahel collaboration and communication that will support the collaboration, phase between all USAID implementing partners, but also increase the linkages between USAID and the government of Burkina Faso. So this is a way to show how collaboration is important, because all activities under the RISE 2 program contribute to achieve the same objectives. So it's very important to have a great focus and to have an eye on the collaboration and make sure that all partners are working together to achieve RISE 2 outcome. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Sadatu. I think that was a really nice way to wrap up the panel in general. Although we're going to keep going with the panel, we have some specific questions that have been coming in, quite a few in fact. And we are curating them in a way that makes most sense for this webinar. As you know, there are 3 other webinars that will be happening in the closeout of REGIS-ER. So there'll be plenty of opportunities to have questions answered on very specific items, but we've highlighted a few things here. And one thing too to remember, that we will be responding to questions after the webinar if we do not get to the questions. So I'm going to jump in and start with the first question here, which is, what aspects of local vision, commitment, inclusion, and leadership do you feel were most critical to producing sustainable results? And I'm going to pass that to either Bill or Amat. I'm not sure if Amat has been able to get back in yet, but if he is, I think he could go ahead. If Bill, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Maggie, I don't see Amat on. Could you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. What aspects of local vision, commitment, inclusion, and leadership do you feel were most critical to producing sustainable results?
Bill, let me give you some ideas on that.
Okay.
My feeling is commitment is a key issue. Once you have trained or build capacities of people, then their commitment will be helping achieve other things. I will talk about this commitment when you talk, if I refer to the youth, just to say that we have used this youth programming and positive youth development. That is the way we address this. And one key issue is commitment. If people are not committed to do something, there is no way we can sustain something. But also inclusiveness. I think that these two words, inclusion and commitment, are the key words for this. Bill, anything to add?
Yeah, just that one pleasant lesson learned from REGIS-ER's work in the communes has been the willingness of municipal governments and the citizen working groups to work together harmoniously. So there was, that has been universal. We have seen that in every commune where we work, and that has been a big plus in every way.
Great. Thanks a lot. And Amat, I'm glad that you're back on. The next question I want to highlight is, again, specific to REGIS-ER, and for either Bill or Amat, but kind of focusing on what Tim highlighted, which is, I think that there's a lot of questions about health, the health aspects of resilience programming, and what we're seeing under RISE, for example, the new health systems programs that are just starting up in both Burkina and Niger. So the question is, what were concretely the health aspects on which the project focused? And what were the main intervention challenges encountered in the security context of the zone? And I would say I hear that's a really big question, but I'd love for you to focus on the health aspects that the project focused on, and then sort of how you dealt with the security challenges in the context based on the health programming. Give a little love to the health programming over here, since we haven't talked as much about it. I don't know, Amat, do you want to start off?
Yes, I will start up. Yeah, just to explain one thing we did with REGIS-ER, we get in the health programming through behavior change communication. And in going in this behavior change communication, we also have built the capacities of women's groups, mainly the mother-to-mother groups, and afterward the husband groups, and also these quality groups as well. Yes, considering the security issue, have also given us opportunities, because on the other side, we also have worked with the village council, but also the season working groups. And even though we could not go in the field, we had sufficient capacity on the ground to have all this go on. And up to now, the mother-to-mother groups are working correctly and also providing support to the all the communities. And I think that yes, this programming was very efficient. Bill?
I don't know. I could add something on the kind of the innovativeness of the husband schools, if that's of interest, Maggie.
Sure, we have a bit of time, and I'm gonna come back to talking about the COVID-19 situation. So why don't you add about husband schools, because that'll be really interesting to hear, and then I'll go to my question just about sort of the adaptation given COVID-19. Go ahead,
Okay.
Bill.
Okay, well, the mother-to-mother groups were the focus of the health activities, but the husband schools were complementary. And one thing that I really like was the innovative change that we made in the in the husband schools. About halfway through the project, we made the husband schools, let's say, less theoretical and more practical. What do I mean by that? So the husband schools methodology was based on 10 small feasible actions. And so it was based on acts, let's say, as opposed to school knowledge or theoretical knowledge. So husbands could perform specific acts to help their wives and children, and it made it much less theoretical and much more practical. And I love that approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad that you highlighted that, because that is one of my favorite approaches that I think a lot of the USAID programming in Burkina and Niger has adopted and adapted according to the location, security, etc. And I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. I'd like to just shift back for a minute to talk about sort of adaptation and how you're strengthening resilience in the context of COVID-19. I mean, I think this is such a critical question for every single person on this webinar. And since REGIS-ER had been implementing for so many years prior to COVID, and then of course, on the other hand, there are really recent startup of activities, new activities USAID had awarded that were really hit hard by the fact that they couldn't get out into the field immediately. What is your take, Bill and Amat, on just how you managed the COVID-19 crisis of really 2020, given it was close to your final year? There were several restrictions and difficulties. Do you have any best practices or sort of, I would say, 1 to 3 bullet points that really were innovations for REGIS-ER to really hold on to what it was that you'd been doing with the communities, really pushing those things forward even before maybe the official closeout, because you saw what was happening with COVID-19. Can you reflect for a minute on that?
Amat, can I make a first statement and then turn it over to you?
Yes, go ahead.
We were more fortunate than the new projects because we were so far into our project, and the sustainability strategy of strengthening the capacity of local institutions and of the community-based solution providers, that strategy was easily transformed into addressing the COVID problem. So we had citizen working groups which on their own initiative had created WhatsApp groups. And those became mechanisms for communication to the entire population of a given commune on COVID. And in Burkina, Amat and the team there used the community-based solution providers in the project's response to COVID, which Amat could explain to you.
Great, yes, Amat, go ahead, please.
Yes, what was interesting on that is being a development project, there was way we could not address this COVID-19. And our thought was, okay, let's go with the community-based solution providers who then can provide services that can help face this COVID-19. And what we trained them on how to make soaps and other useful products that can be used to prevent COVID-19. And also we linked that with our youth strategy. And so there was young people that was trained to do that. And being with this CWGs, I think that it was 10 days ago. Being in Seitenga is another thing that we would this survey that we were doing and for the youth activities, we have been told by the CWG of Seitenga that they are preparing a specific proposal on how to face this COVID-19 in their commune. And it was very interesting for us to talk about that. And the CBSEs have been trained on how to do either hydroalcoholic gels, but also soap and so on. And then they are actually selling a lot. Wow. Are you there? And the one thing also I have to add is we linked them with other USAID projects like CareOV, and they have begun selling products to other communities. That's what I wanted to add.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much, Amat. I think those are some really good examples. I want to stay on the same theme for a minute. I've noticed a lot of questions coming up about also women's involvement and sort of best practices or lessons around women's involvement. I'd like to just turn that a little bit because we don't have a lot of time, but I do want to just hear from maybe Tim and Sadatu and maybe Bill or Amat last. Just, you know, in this period of COVID and how we've been adapting, there are certain things that you guys explained, Bill and Amat, how that affected your work at the community level, with individuals at the commune level, and sort of some of the programmatic adaptations that you took. But I'm wondering if maybe you can just reflect for a minute on some of the program management and sort of oversight, monitoring adaptations that had to take place. And if there were specific adaptations that you had to make, which were, you know, if you are able to talk about sort of how those affected women or men or youth or girls or boys differently, that might be interesting. But on a larger scale, I'd just like to hear sort of how have things adapted from the program management side and the monitoring side. And I think Tim has, you know, had a lot of plans for data collection in 2020 and still managed to get them done despite COVID. And I'm sure USAID also had some additional plans and they were still able to get quite a bit done. So just maybe a final reflection on how we go forward. Regis is closing out. We're still dealing with COVID-19. We have learned a tremendous amount from sort of the transition and empowerment of communities that Regis provided and really helped flourish. But where are we now in terms of how do we continue our program management and monitoring and ensuring that we keep all of these excellent things that we've done together going, and how do we know we're still doing well? Tim or Sadatu, if you want to jump in for a minute.
Yeah. Well, we definitely, you know, carrying out surveys with COVID has always been a challenge, and we were fortunate enough that we were able to use phone surveys to actually make up for places that we couldn't get to because of COVID, and so, but we had to streamline the questionnaire a little bit to be able to do that so that we could get the information. I think one of the other things that was really important as part of our inline is we had a separate module that we were using to collect women's empowerment information. And so we're in the middle of analyzing that data right now. But, you know, it's always a challenge when phones are in short supply and making sure that women have access to these things. And so we made a concerted effort to make sure that happened, and that they were also in a space where they, you know, they weren't somebody listening over their shoulder, so they wouldn't be honest. So we took steps, and we've got guidelines we can share with people about how to do that, to carry out these kind of surveys virtually. But I'm really interested in making sure that that analysis is shared with everybody as soon as we can. Over.
Great. Great. Thank you, Tim. I think that's really key, and I'm glad that you're able to share some of those guidelines, because I'm imagining everyone on this call is somehow struggling with that in one way or another. Sadatu, do you want to add anything from the USAID perspective on sort of oversight or, you know, work with REGIS-ER in the closeout given COVID? Just some final thoughts, and then I'll let Bill and Amat sort of close out.
Yeah, thank you, Maggie. I think the support that USAID or the perception of, not perception, perspective of USAID with regard to COVID-19 is not only, you know, specific to REGIS-ER, but it's a kind of collaborating, bringing together all RISE to partners by providing a sort of flexibility in their program to be able to come out with a response and you know, adapted response and adaptive management to be able to still continue implementing, taking into consideration all the prevention measures while implementing the activities. So USAID for one point, provided additional funds to some of the projects to be able to respond to COVID-19, and also work to have a kind of contingency plan handled by one project and bring together all the others to be able to support this kind of response at the community level. Another point that was made is a gender assessment study that was conducted to make sure that women, you know, to make sure that we have women inclusion while providing response to the COVID-19, specifically around the water, access to water, and you know, handling all the chain, all the process between where the water point is and till the place where the people are, you know, like drinking the water and making sure that it's potable water, the chain is maintained. So basically it's a global approach. It's not like individual to REGIS-ER. We're making sure that all these programs are talking together, collaborating, and contributing to this contingency plan of shock response to the COVID. And the situation is not only, you know, when it's related to COVID, it's any shocks that may occur. We have the insecurity situation that Burkina Faso is facing, and our program, we have to adapt the way they implement. And COVID is just an example of really forcing or, you know, shifting the way we used to implement to another way to be able really to take into consideration the situation, the context, and continue implementing. So from USAID side, it's really flexibility and providing support and, you know, working to bring together all partners to implement and response in the way to respond to this shock. Over.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sadatu. We are at the bottom of the hour here. We're at 1/2 and so I know that many of you probably have other meetings to go to, but I do want to ask Bill and Amat, maybe just if you can hold on for another minute to please give us your final thoughts on this opening webinar. As you've seen in the link, in the chat box, there's going to be 3 other webinars. We will be responding to all of the questions that came in. There were some really interesting ones. So don't worry, we will get to them. You'll just hear them via email or via the website. Bill, Amat, one last thought from each of you, and then we will close it out.
Just that we're excited by the participation and by the interest, and we hadn't realized that there would be so much to do afterwards in responding to these questions, but we look forward to that, and we look forward to the next 3 webinars.
Thanks, Bill. Amat, any last points from your side?
Yeah, just confirming that we will be committed to responding to the questions that have been raised, and was really impressed by the quality of the exchanges we have in this panel, and also the question we have from other people. Maybe let's some things for these WhatsApp groups that we have promoted, that's helped a lot in this other process we have for security problems, and as well as the COVID-19 problem, and
Great.
also this monitoring and also collecting information from the fields. Just letting people know that there are some things to do going forward to have this information from these WhatsApp groups. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So I'd like to take this opportunity to close out the webinar. Thank you so much to NCBA CLUSA and their team at headquarters in Burkina and Niger for making this happen. Thanks to my team, SCC, and thanks to Tim Frankenberger, Sadatu Umaru, Amat Diop, and Bill Stringfellow for your participation in the panel. And I'm just going to hand it over to Kira if she wants to do the official closeout, but I think the substantive closeout has happened, and thank you so much, and we will be in touch, and please join for the next 3 webinars. Over to you, Kira.
Thanks, Maggie. I really don't have much to add, but thank you to you, Maggie, for moderating a great discussion, and to all our panelists, and to everyone who participated. And we look forward to seeing you at the future webinars. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Goodbye to all. Thanks for having participated.
Bye.
Thanks again. Have a good evening and rest of your day.
Assist, let's see.